The sea that turns to land, the beach that turns to meadow. This is a story, Grass and Sand. This is a special podcast edition with special guest Jane Turner of the Cheshire and Wirral Ornithological Society with degrees in zoology and biophysics and a PhD in biophysics and colour chemistry. We talk about Hoylake Beach and its current transformation. There will also be relevant pictures and videos at those specific times showing the relevant processes that are happening at that point in time. So mainly audio with some scenic views, but use the chapters feature to move to different sections of the discussion. I guarantee you will find out things that you never knew.
There's two physical processes that we need to look at. One is the sand arriving, and two, what's happening, what's going on with the groundwater. This buttonweed's not native, but it's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, there's 175 or 8 different types of plant here now, and 20 of them are nationally endangered, which is quite remarkable. But it's got such a rare habitat. There's one growing on down there that's only in, well, it was only 2 other places. It's one of 2 places, but it's just started to grow at Ainsdale. So it's one of 3 locations. I was going to wander out till I found the first Spartina.
Oh yeah, that was the clumps you were saying.
Yeah, these aren't Spartina, this is Puccinelia, which is, I really want to talk about this one. This is an amazing plant. Yeah, okay, I found, so there's our first, yeah. Well, that could be 2, don't you? You go, oh yes, this is okay. So, there. That one. It's true, this is really quite interesting. It was an accidental hybrid of habitats, but actually it's really limited. It can only do a band. It could grow over there, but it can't compete with everything else. So it's now stuck in this band of height from here to out to those clumps there, which is about 20 centimetres of vertical height.
So, okay, so that's the height. So that's between. It's too dry.
It's
the dryness, or is it saltness?
That side it gets out competed. I'll explain that.
Yeah.
So here seagulls can grow apart from another species called Salicornia, glasswort, or samphire. You know samphire, the stuff you eat with your fish if you go to posh restaurants. Yeah. That can survive in this range, but it's too salty and it's too wet, basically, out this way. So it's called the Pioneer Zone.
Okay.
And it's where you can see it's quite broad because it's a really flat bit of beach.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once it gets to this species here, just behind us, that one's called Puccinelia. That one's common salt marsh grass.
Okay, well that's the same as the other over there?
So most of it, but
that belongs to that end.
Yeah.
And this belongs to that end.
Yeah. So that's your
standing on the border.
Yeah. There you are on the border.
Yeah.
And if you look down towards Hilbury here, you can see. You see the sort of there's raised tufts of this Puccinelia.
Puccinelia, that's the one on the right.
Yeah, it's basically you can see because it's growing as really at the moment really lush mounds.
Yeah.
It's making little sand mounds around it.
Yeah.
And as I said,
that belongs to the right hand.
Oh, that belongs to the. But this one basically is limited by being a big salt. It's got a salt tolerance limit, which is clearly about here.
Yeah,
which is effectively a height measure because it's how often it goes underwater in salt water. What it's so special about it is it actively prefers, it grows better if it gets slightly buried in sand regularly. Spartina gets smothered.
Yeah.
Puccinelia, when it gets buried in sand, which it does because you get sandstorms bringing sand in all the time.
Yeah.
What it does is it etiolates basically. It stretches between sort of the nodes on its stem, grows longer, grows through the pile of sand, and goes, yippee, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So consequently, it's really, really good at forming proto-sand dunes. So again, if you look down that way, you can see it's actually. You can probably see it a bit further in actually. I'll show you when we get there. You can see that it's the species that on our beach that is going to form embryo dunes because it collects up the sand as it comes in, stops it getting inland.
So when we say dunes, is this going to be basically similar to Formby dunes?
Yeah, Formby or Talica, Point of Air, or yeah, identical to Point of Air basically. It's exactly the same. It's probably going to get. We've got a wider beach, so we'll get more sand coming in. But yeah, it's going to be. It's got the same amount of tidal scour. It's got the same amount of wind. It's going to look just like Talica.
This is like a time travel in
Yeah.
a way. We can
Yeah.
see Hoylake Beach in the future
Yeah.
by going over to North Wales,
Yeah.
and we can go to Hoylake Beach to see what North Wales looked like in the past.
Yeah.
What kind of time scale do you know between the
Well,
two?
The best measure we've got is actually Birkdale, where they've just released that car park, as I explained in mitigation. And it's taken 5 years to go from a flat bit of sand into what is identifiable little embryo dunes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've got almost identical set of plants on it to we've got here. They call it the new green beach, which is at Ainsdale. And it's they're clones basically. They've got all the same plants. They're coming from the same sources.
And of course, it's all in the same region.
Yeah, it's the same.
All fed from the RSC tidal.
Yeah.
Tidal from the RSC.
The sand basically has come from the North Wales sea cliffs.
Okay.
And it moves basically generally west to east, mostly underwater, in sort of rolling waves of sand. But yeah, it's
And that's why it builds up.
yeah. Well,
on this side.
it builds up because of the wind, which is something else I need to explain.
Yeah.
But basically, there's three ways that there's water too, but there's three main ways that sand is moved by the wind. There's a process called suspension, which is where little bits get in the air, and that just goes. Sand can get here from the Sahara Desert when it gets suspended.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a process called reptation, which is where you get a big pile of loose sand that sort of rolls across itself as a dune. And they, between them, count for 5% of sand movement. The big one is a process called saltation, which if you've ever looked at a big beach in wind, you'll notice that everyone below the knee disappears because sand basically jumps and little bounces, that's saltare, to bound or to dance, from Latin, it bounds along. 95% of sand moves that way, knee height, across a big expanse of sand like this, and it can move a phenomenal amount of sand.
I've been at a dry beach on a windy day.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a fog.
Yeah, it is.
And if you get your head down, you've just got sand in your eye, haven't you?
Yeah.
And it's just whipping across.
Absolutely.
And you think it's probably going at speed of the wind, probably.
Yeah, it is.
20, 30 mile an hour across the beach to the other end. And it's got to go somewhere.
Absolutely.
And
the answer is it's coming in.
And it comes from somewhere.
Yeah, so it's coming. It's coming from out there, and it's coming inland, and it does. So this is the thing the number I always remember. You think of a force 8 gale, which we get.
Yeah.
A force 8 gale can move 6.75 metres squared of sand per day per metre. So that's the volume of a small car per metre of beach.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you picture how much sand that is, if at any point we ever get all of that coming in, it's capable of shutting down the town. It'll shut the roads for sure. It's a ridiculous amount of sand. We're currently saved by the fact we've got a green beach and we've got a little bit of space between the end of the bottom of the seawall and the beach.
So this is a protection for the coast as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can see that. We'll go a bit further in, and you can see how that's happening. It's a natural sand break, and it's doing a grand job of it. It survived Darwin, which was a ridiculously heavy sandstorm.
Mm-hmm.
I took loads of photographs, which I can send you if you want, and video of the sand coming in. And I can show you the line as we walk back in. Basically, building up, it hits. The reason it happens is, that knee level movement you get of sand. It's dependent on the wind shear strength, which is what basically moves the sand, which is this is getting very physics on here, determined by laminar flow. So if you put surface roughness down, it breaks up the ability of the wind to move the sand. Basically, it drops the level, the speed of the wind close to the ground.
Yeah.
That doesn't have to be very high because the sand's only getting 4 centimetres up. If you can break up the level of sand low, you take out the strength of the wind. The sand just drops it. The wind just drops the sand where it is.
I understand that. I used to be an instrument technician, and we did measurements of flow in pipes.
Yeah.
So you had laminar flow and turbulent flow and stuff like that.
So basically,
And,
that's what.
and the velocity at the side of the pipe was zero.
Yeah.
You know, and then one laminar flow, and then as you went further in, the velocity was bigger. Yeah.
Precisely. So
There's a resistance.
Yeah.
There's a resistance on there.
So if you have, now here's another number for you. If you have 15 plants per metre squared, and they don't have to be big, just little tufts of grass, that takes that 6.75 metres cubed per metre per day down to 0.75. So you go from the volume of a car to the volume of a waste paper bin, just by putting a little bit of grass in.
So on days like today, in that grand scheme of things, nothing much is happening.
No.
But over the course of the year, there are obviously always several storms,
Yeah.
as we put it, windy days,
Yeah.
very windy days, and that's when the majority of things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So after a big storm, you could probably come out here and see a physical difference
Absolutely.
overnight.
Yeah.
You know, but after a week of sunshine and calm weather, there's going to be no difference.
Yeah.
But over the months per storm, so it all depends as well on how many storms there are
Which
per
we're
year.
getting more storms.
Yeah, so we get more storms on average. We're going to get more. This is accelerated.
So we've got more storms on average. We used to be protected by. So I have to go back into a bit of physics again. The reason you get that cloud of sand at knee level is because basically the sand splashes. You get so your sand grain gets lifted by the differential in pressure. It jumps in the air, gravity takes over, it lands again,
Yeah.
it bounces, and it releases more sand. So you get one sand grain makes 5 sand grains. 5 jumps in, you're into 1 million sand grains moving.
Yeah.
And then you're limited by the wind strength.
Yeah.
So if you've got
The higher the wind strength, the higher it'll come.
higher the wind strength, and the more
Yeah.
it can carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it can't go too high. It can't be, because of gravity.
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely, absolutely. So the other thing that's important is the surface that's being hit. So if it's wet, or if it's being compacted, or if it's got grass on it,
Yeah.
or if it's muddy, it doesn't saltate. You know, that bouncing process stops because it can't splash. But if you've got dry open sand, then off it goes. It bounces.
So that's where the grass at the promenade edge by the wall is a high resistance, isn't it?
Yeah. And this is too. But the point I was making is we used to be protected by the gutter. The gutter, even when it was filled with mud, was a break. It was a natural break. So the sand would bounce in, and it would stop because it hit that mud.
It would go in the gutter.
Yeah, it'd go in the gutter, and it couldn't because the gutter was regularly wet. Even the process of just it getting wet and then drying off again, you get like a salt crust which would fix the surface. Picture that. So the sand would come in, it would hit that, and then it would just sort of accumulate in a pile because it couldn't move.
Yeah.
But we lost that in 2010. The last bit of mud in the gutter got covered by sand, which is suddenly we've gone from having very little of the sand getting this far to all of the sand getting this far.
All right. Yeah.
Which is making so the rate of if you look at the LiDAR scans, the rate of increase of sand where we're stood now is 5-6 times more than it was before 2010.
Okay.
So we're getting 5 or 6 times more sand getting to this point than we had previously, which is
Since 2010.
yes, since 2010. So that's quite an important thing.
Is this right? The D estuary and Park Gate especially is it a similar story there, or is that estuary based?
It's a completely different
Is it,
story. That's up an estuary.
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's two of the same grasses.
Okay.
So it's Spartina and Puccinelia. Puccinelia is just as happy on a salt marsh as it is on a sandy beach, whereas actually Spartina doesn't do very well on estuaries. It's almost extinct on the D now. But so this beast here, Puccinelia, is equally happy on an estuary.
Okay.
But you haven't got the salt there. You haven't got the tidal scour there. They're two other factors you need to consider.
All right, because
and you haven't got the sand delivery.
Okay.
Yeah. You haven't got sand delivery. You've got mud delivery. So you basically got that's the other process that's changed. So when the tide comes in, it's carrying lots of small fine sediment. which is come out the Dees, come out the Mersey. You can see how muddy the water looks. That comes in, it settles, it drops, it leaves a pile of mud, which is why that gutter was a muddy break for so long, because the tide would come up it on a regular basis, go out slowly, drop its mud.
Yeah.
We're not getting mud anymore because the tide doesn't come in. So it's really rare that we get mud brought into this level. So yeah, that's a big difference between here and Parkgate.
So, you get the high tides. Do they still come up here regular? Well, when I say like once a year type of high tide.
Yeah, the biggest tide of the year this year with a big, quite a big storm surge on it. The kind that would have, the kind that flooded West Kirby.
Yeah.
Didn't get over the. It got over the lifeboat end, but it didn't get over the near end because this is now dry land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So even on the highest
Yeah.
tide. So the days where Parkgate floods.
Yeah.
And everyone goes down there,
Yeah.
and Parkgate floods on the high tide.
Yeah.
On those days, didn't come here.
Didn't
Even on a day. Remember the day, was it 2010ish, when New Brighton flooded and Morrison's flooded?
That flooded here.
And it flooded here
Yeah,
then. So it's so that's like a once in a 30 year.
But
which is going to be less and less, isn't it now? So
I've forgotten the name of the storm. There was a storm. It had a name. One of the named ones this year. It did flood at Parkgate. It even flooded up to Burton.
Eunice, was it?
The Eunice, is it?
That was one of them, wasn't it? I don't know if it was that.
So it flooded Parkgate. It flooded Burton. It didn't flood here. That had a little to do with the fact the storm surge just there was a dip in the storm surge, just as the tide came in. So we got off lightly.
Yeah. There's a lot of the height of tides. I used to do scuba diving, so sort of tide heights and stuff like that was a big thing. And of course, all the tide tables are only predictions, and it depends on pressures on the day. Lower pressure would give you a higher tide and stuff like that, and a storm surge would bring things up as well. And they're the things you can't calculate.
Absolutely.
You may be able to closer to the day because they could predict. Hang on, West Kirby might flood during this storm because there's a high tide. It's a new moon, etc., etc.
So there was a dip. There was a 75 centimetre dip in the storm surge. It looked like an M. And the high tide went through right in the pit of the bottom bit. So we got. I think it would have gone under had that coincided.
Yeah. So people see this, and look at it and think, where's all this grass come from? We have to get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's what some people may think.
Yeah.
And you could say that's understandable in a certain frame of mind, but there's a whole load of issues with that. So you said before that this has been cleaned and sprayed, pesticided many times in the past, but this time it's not happened.
Yeah.
So why was that?
So it's actually quite a complicated story. And you need to understand the legal frameworks around it.
Yeah.
So this has multiple layers of protection. It's an SSSI, which is the thing that everyone knows about. That's the site of special scientific interest. And how it was ever given permission to be raked and sprayed, I don't know. But the fact is, it was, and it was raked. And basically, there was legal permission to remove the two grasses we've just talked about, the Puccinelia and the Spartina. And what happened was, I didn't say this earlier, what happened was there was an incident where a lot, not just a little bit, a lot of glyphosate was dumped on the beach in the middle of August, which meant the beach had to be shut down. It got into social media and there was a big kick-off. And what happened then was the absolutely newly instituted chair of the Environment Committee on the council said, why are we spraying this beach? Because she didn't know about it at the time. And she went to speak to Natural England, who said, who basically said, and the documents are all in the public view, we don't think you can spray and rake this legally, because it's not just these two grasses, there's loads of other things here, and by the way, if you do, we'll prosecute you. At which point, and they also said, and we won't be renewing the assent to to damage it basically. So and it runs out next year. So this was the end of the raking season, and so at that point they called her, what she called the chair called her, hold, let's look at this, let's do this properly. Natural England then said they wanted a thorough, and they meant thorough, geomorphology and botanical study of the area before they'd consider doing anything else. So that's the legal position we're in now. But it's more complicated than that. It's a lot more complicated than that, because not only is it SSSI, it's a SPA, that's a Special Protection Area, based on birds. It's also an SAC, a Special Area Conservation. That's we're now into international law, based on the habitat itself. And so, getting technical, this is an Annex 1. Means it's technically an irreplaceable habitat that is in the citation for the de estuary SAC. It's called Atlantic Salt Meadow. So even if Natural England said, yeah, just clear the lot, but they're going to be subject to international law, because it's covered by the Ramsar Convention and the Berne Convention as an internationally protected site. Because on top of the SAC, it's a Ramsar site too. So that's a worldwide sort of special area of international importance.
So this is now just, it's so protected, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it couldn't be more protected if it tried. And it's specifically this habitat, Atlantic Salt Meadow, that is in the citation for the de estuary.
Yeah.
So it's going to take an incredible persuasive argument that Natural England can then sell internationally before you get to damage any of it.
That would take a long time as well, even if that did happen.
Yeah, well,
in the meantime, it'll be way bigger than this, wouldn't it?
By the time, I don't know how long it'll take to get legal permission, but it'll be sand dunes by the time anybody's thought about it. Yeah.
I remember as well that at some point Chris Peckham got involved. I don't know if he came down here or we just tweeted something, didn't he? Sort of backing it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Right? It's very much in the public domain now. Whereas before, it was like a sort of a back room. Okay, you just do it quietly and nobody will know.
Do you know why people wanted to get rid of it or prevent it in the first place? Was it purely aesthetic?
They don't look at it. I mean, I can't. People are allowed to have different views.
Because after that pigeon,
yeah,
the pigeons go up.
yeah. I think the dog's about to discover that pigeons can fly up as well as along. Yeah, it's gone from being like a little backwater issue that nobody knew about, and they could probably get away with breaking the law technically, to a situation where it's so in the public eye that nobody's going to do anything that. Nobody's going to take any legal risks on this anymore. So, yeah.
What about from another standpoint? Would you thought that the council, if that's who was doing it in the first place, the raking and the pesticide, would you thought that they'd be happy because that costs money, and now they don't have to spend that money?
I don't think it costs that much money. The removal and the raking of the beach is peanuts. What costs money is the clearing the sand off the promenade as a result of you raking and cleaning the beach, picking not stuff in the sand.
Yeah.
In 2000, the World Council spent £120,000 clearing sand for Muscovy and Hoylake. They budget for, I think it's £46,000 a year to clean sand just off Hoylake Promenade.
So this grass prevents the build-up of sand on the promenade?
Absolutely. And as I was saying, we're going to get, if you just do the sums in your head, we've got 10 times more sand arriving, and we're about to get 100% rather than 4% of that sand on the beach. So we're talking catastrophic levels of sand will be arriving.
Well, we'll have a look at the minute. There's the stone wall.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know how big that stone wall actually is?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a kid, I used to live in the house over there.
We got a quick.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Doesn't matter which one.
Yeah, approximately. I used to live in that one, and I was a bit of a tomboy, and I was scared jumping off the wall. It was a big curve. You had to jump wide in order not to hit the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And you could twist your ankle. I could only get back up it with a rope.
So are you looking over 6 foot
Oh
and
God,
10 foot?
it was this kind of height. Yeah.
Yeah, so 8 foot,
Yeah.
8 foot tall or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
now,
look at the railings. You can see the railings disappearing.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have a look at that in a minute. Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll go in there.
there's photographs of the Alderley slipway with a donkey tied to the bottom rail. You know, so you've lost a donkey's height.
Yeah,
But people focus. I mean, it actually just under the seawall hasn't changed that much. It's out here. This is at 20 feet, 30 feet out where we are.
yeah,
So Hoylake you see on the maps, which is Dove Point, which is where the big dunes ended, and we're left with little dunes, which are the great big dunes you can see if you go and walk down through Meols. So
Yeah.
they were they're the little dunes, and these were massive things.
yeah.
So the point is, the town is built on a pile of sand, and the pile of sand is sat on a bed of alluvial clay. So it's just like a trail. If you could imagine a tea tray, which is an imperial layer of clay that goes right under Hoylake and out the other side in the fields, with what's effectively a sponge sat on top of it, because water can wick up into the spaces, the interstitial spaces in the sand. So you've got a great big soggy sponge of water picking up rain from from inland, and it flows under Hoylake and comes out here.
Yeah.
So
this is rainwater.
this is rainwater that's come inland here.
Grimsby or something.
Yeah, well,
You
yeah,
know, or wherever.
basically the whole of North of Wirral was a wetland. Wallasey was an island. You can see it really
Yeah,
beautifully.
we've covered that on the previous video.
Yeah. Wallasey was an island. Lytham was an island. Whole of North of Wirral was wet scrubland. It was probably full of beavers. And
Well, if you go back, of course, you've got the what was it? The forest, the submerged forest.
Yeah,
of Meols.
that was on the Dove Peninsula, which
Okay. Yeah.
which was off Dove Point. Yeah. We are all over the place here. Meols was wiped out by a sandstorm in, I can't remember if it was the late 1300s or the late 1400s. I think it was the late 1300s. It was wiped out by a sandstorm.
Yeah.
Which is why it's basically and the town has also now been eroded out, because it was one of the most important ports in Britain from Roman times and probably even earlier. It's likely where the Vikings landed too. It was a big Viking port. They used to go in. This is the patch of sand here. It's getting quite nicely raised by the Pritchnelia. So if you
You can feel, almost physically feel like you're walking uphill.
You've got uphill.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a proper dune ridge. Yeah. So if you stand here, I think this is where Arwen got to. But yeah, Arwen got to around here, and you can see now we're on a ridge of sand. We've got wet stuff outside, and we've actually got wet stuff inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see that? So you can see the Pritchnelia forming little dune ridges. We're on the Arwen ridge here. So this is exactly where Arwen got to. But that's what's going to basically, we're going to form lots of little ridges and slacks, and they're not going to be particularly high. We're not going to get massive towering sand dunes until we get to a situation where this hits a place where the sea scales it regularly, and then you start building vertically rather than horizontally.
Okay. Yeah.
Picture that. The beach out there is actually dropping, so the whole thing's steepening.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's basically the back of the bank, the sandbank's coming in. It's getting steeper and steeper off the back of it. So the tide will start coming in closer, and at some point in the future, I don't know if I'll see it, we'll get to a stage where we have a flat dune, sort of dune slack area like this, and then a big, some distance off that way, we'll start to get a big dune ridge, and the tide scouring it regularly, so it'll look like Formby or Ainsdale.
Right.
With this like flat meadow behind it.
So it'll come further in.
Yeah, it should do.
Yeah.
It's steepening quite
But
dramatically.
so it'll just come into that ridge.
Yeah. The average height of the beach is going up 2.5 centimetres a year. Which, if you calculate that, that's 11 truckloads of sand a day.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge
Yeah.
flat, say flat, but huge flat
so
beach.
you can
Isn't
picture that 2.5 centimetres of sand as an average, but actually it's dropping at the far edge. It's going down about 2 or 3 centimetres, and it's coming up more like 4 or 5 down this front edge. So this bit, the land inside of the grass is stable. Outside the grass is raising quite dramatically, and then it's doing an average of about 2.5, but out at sea it's dropping again. So the whole beach is changing profile.
So the RNLI will have less distance to go out to.
Yeah. If it keeps doing what it's doing,
Yeah.
because you can't predict what sandbanks are going to do, but
Yeah.
they do what they want basically. There's not much you can do about it. I'll go find you some world grass. Yeah, this one here. See this one here?
Yeah.
It's called sea milk. If you get in close on that, get on the bee.
Yeah, I was thinking the bee. Yeah.
So this one here is called sea milkwort, and you can see that it's providing pollen. These bumblebees are coming from people's gardens out here because it's such a good source of pollen and nectar. It's a beautiful little plant, isn't it? If you get close in on
close
it.
up, yeah. What's it called again?
Sea milkwort. It's too big for stuff, eh?
There we go. So that's a good one.
Yeah, I think this one is called marsh arrowgrass, which is actually endangered.
Which one am I looking at there?
I think it's marsh arrowgrass that's endangered rather than sea arrowgrass. I'll have to check that one up. I'll get back to you on that one.
Okay.
I am making these up. There's just this clumpy thing here.
Yeah. So what's that one called?
That's marsh arrowgrass.
Okay.
Whereas its near relative, that one over there, the big one is sea arrowgrass.
Oh yeah. So what are these big tall ones here?
That's sea arrowgrass.
So, yeah.
I may have got
Another
this
one
the
there.
wrong way around. I'll have to check.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suspect we're in these are I don't know what kind of, but this is a wet area. So we're now in a June slack, and it's obvious actually that the buckwheat likes it more here than it does on the flat bits because it's bigger, isn't it?
That's the yellow one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's South Africa. Got in here by accident. It's actually quite. It's also at a few other places. You probably got it on the thing at birds because it's come from Martin. It's quite common at Martin Mere, so it's quite likely been brought in on a bird.
Yeah.
From Martin Mere. Yeah, this is lower. This area here is lower than that area over there.
Oh yes, isn't it?
Yeah. And that's because in one of the earlier storms, that's where the incoming sand was dropped by the grasses. It didn't get this far.
So you're getting different plants at different heights.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing to me how, what was it, a few inches lower or something like that, and it's completely different. Is that because of water levels and things like that?
So we've got basically the water table goes up and down here depending on how much rain there's been inland. So this area gets wet, freshwater water. These are mostly. This I think the buckwheat could take about 70. A lot of these are not very salt tolerant, but they're protected because they're not getting salt water. They're getting fresh water. So this is actually a freshwater habitat or brackish water habitat, not saltwater habitat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unreal, isn't it?
Yeah, just caused by that little dune ridge out there, big enough to stop water. Right, we head up. We've got actual botanists out here that can tell you a lot more. I'm really picking it up by frequent contact with botanists. Yeah, I think this is all sand couch, which is the dune form we're on now. This beast here. It's another type of grass. Now the really rare one is over here in this. So we were talking about the water, basically the water coming in from inland.
Yeah.
Seawall acts as a dam. So behind behind the seawall, there's a really high water table.
Okay.
Because basically the sand's coming from inland, the sea's coming from inland. But there's a crack in the cobbles here.
Okay.
So just round here somewhere. Yeah, just round here somewhere. There's basically a crack in a break in the dam, and the water's getting out and flowing down here. So there's always constant water here.
You can see here as well the example of how much the sand level has risen.
Yeah.
With this rail here.
Yeah.
So obviously, when this rail was put in, it was put in on a slipway.
Yeah.
And the end of the slipway is almost disappeared.
Yeah.
So you can see.
If you look at photographs of Edwardian times, the sand was up high against the wall, and it sloped down at about 45 degrees.
Yeah.
But what's changed is basically all this area in front of us is filled in. There used to be a little bit of windblown sand up against the wall, but even then it was probably a good 6 feet lower.
So that wall there,
yeah,
would have had 6-7 foot
of drop. Yeah.
And now you can literally just step up if you wanted to.
We finished with the netting wasn't there, you could just get off. But this is a slightly different habitat here because of this constant supply of fresh water to the surface as well as the underground water.
Yeah.
And that's why I know there's some of the sea wildgrass, which is just... I'll go see if I can find it.
Yeah, let's go and have a look for that.
Yeah.
So in terms of rarity, how rare?
2 sites in England.
2 sites in England. Yeah. Is it likely to be in other places in the world, or is it this better habitat for it?
It's. I think again, I'm not a botanist. I think it's confined to northwest England. I think it's here and somewhere in Cumbria, but they've just found it at Birkdale.
Right.
So it's now 3 sites in England. It's just moved into Birkdale.
Yeah.
Probably from here.
Yeah.
Probably on the feet of a bird from here. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Because you've got how a lot of seed travels is from bird, wind.
Yeah. Birds and tide. It's actually why, if you look at the management information for the SSSI here, you're specifically not allowed to disturb or clear the edge of wherever tide drops stuff. I forget what it's called. It's got a name. Drift line. Yeah, drift line. You must got to leave the drift line because that's where plants are coming from. Right. They come in. They're all specially evolved to be able to survive, the seeds to float around in the sea. And that's where they come from. Comes in on the sea with a tide. Yeah. And it sits here waiting for the right conditions.
Yeah. Yeah, because the sea could land anywhere.
Yeah.
If it's the wrong conditions, nothing will happen.
Yeah. So it's been waiting to be cast there. You can see the Puccinelia, the salt marsh grass, has stopped a load of sand coming in. That was actually I've got a video of that for you if you want. Well, I've got some video of that. You show it catching the sand, stopping it dead, and building a ridge. And in the process of doing that, it's also killed off any Spartina, because Spartina can't stand being buried. They realised that one of the problems was nobody was responsible for stabilising mobile sandbanks. So it was a law that was put in by Elizabeth the First that said if you were a property owner, landowner, within 3 miles of a mobile sandbank, you were responsible for planting it with marrow. And it's in the deeds of the old houses of Hoylake. So the old houses of Hoylake have a law that says you, Mr. whatever name, are responsible for keeping this patch of sand in front of your house planted with marrow. Now if this sand for any reason gets off that bit of land, you're responsible for clearing it off any road or any neighbour's property. It's in the deeds of the bloody houses. It was the I can't remember the name of the act, but the act's in the deeds of the houses. In 1730s, Formby was destroyed, and I mean destroyed by a mobile sandbank, and they had to move the church 2 kilometres. The town was abandoned. All the neighbouring villages were lost. There's about 5 lost villages there. And something similar happened the year before in Scotland. There's the Scottish law, and then the English law followed it up. So what happened was people had been picking the marron grass and making mats and brushes and stuff out of it, destabilising the dunes.
All right.
And the dunes ceased to function as a break, and they got buried by sand. So a new law came out called the Sand and Bent Act, which made it illegal to pick dune grasses. So you couldn't have touched that because of this law. So if that law was still in place, it would be illegal to touch sand couch, which is this one here, and marram, which is, we haven't got any much marram, but it's illegal to touch it for that reason, because it protects the land. That was only, what's the word when it gets, I can't remember the name for word for when you, it'll come back to me. When a law was taken out of existence, anyway, it was replaced and unenacted. Let's use unenacted as the word, like I remember it. It's 1968, which is quite recent. Yeah, so up until then, it was illegal to touch dune grasses because they provided protection, soft protection to coasts.
Yeah.
Which I think is the single most fascinating bit of the whole thing. Yeah, and it's in the deeds of the local houses.
Yeah. So it's not a law of now to the public.
No.
But it's still a law. It's still a right, a condition of certain houses.
Yeah.
Which houses? What is it? Where the deeds? It's back to that time.
It's the old Georgian houses. So the
okay. Yeah.
It's Seaview.
So the Georgian houses. Yeah.
So before, basically, the ones because before this promenade went in, this was a massive dune system with some old Georgian houses behind it. There's some really good old photographs actually. You can just see there's loads. So if you think about what it currently looks like, at least so it looked like that here, except there wasn't a wall. It was just there were houses, and then there were dunes, and then there was a sea. And you had to, if you lived in those houses on Sea View, which no longer has a sea view because it's got 4 rows of houses built in front of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you lived in Sea View, it was your responsibility to make sure that the bit of sand dune in front of your house was planted up with marron grass.
What you're describing there, man, puts in my head. There's in Rossniger in Anglesey.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, hang on, that sounds like Rossniger in Anglesey, but it does that same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm wondering
that's because it is because when Newborough Warren was one of the places, Newborough was destroyed, which is very close to Rossniger.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah,
So that was 1331, I think. That got totaled by a sandstorm.
Yeah.
They lost all their agricultural land and they lost their village, like Meols. Yeah, Meols went out. I think Meols was late. I think it was late 1400s, because it's basically it got eroded out in got eroded out in Victorian times, but it was a sand according to Pompeii. It was the best preferred medieval village ever found because they had to abandon it in a real rush because it got buried by sand.
Yeah.
Which.
Yeah, I was going to say about that.
Yeah, so Rossniger. So yeah, there's houses. I've only found them in 3 because it's a really hard thing to search for people's deeds. But I found Northumberland, I found Anglesey, and I found here. I've got that act. There's been an act written into their deeds.
Yeah, because a bit over there, and then you mentioned it, and I thought, I've been somewhere like that, and it's like that because it is. Because it makes you think, that was there's the house and there's the sand.
Yeah.
You know, and then that was probably like here.
Yeah.
You know, but now there's rows of houses there instead. So is this constant change?
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything, isn't it?
Oh,
everything in nature.
This is a sand delta, you know.
Yeah, but some things change over, decades. Some things change over thousands and thousands of years. Some takes, some things can change over the entire species of human, or of one particular species.
Yeah.
but that something can change in a storm.
Precisely.
You know,
So
one minute there's a village,
next
one
minute
storm
it's gone.
later there's no village.
Yeah.
You know, and that can, or the you know, the erosion on the east coast where I've been to this place where there's a car park. We went down this road and they put a barrier there.
Yeah.
And there was these locals there, and they said, yeah, this road.
Just go straight to the.
There was
into
3
the pair.
houses and a pub
Yeah.
on this road,
But they've
and I
fallen
remember
off.
them.
Yeah.
Right, and they're like,
Yeah. It's
where'd
gone.
they gone?
Yeah.
They just
Well, that's because our side's lifting and so it's isostatic rebound. There was a big glacier on top of Britain, which pushed our side down, and it's just gently lifting, and the other side's just gently tipping. So that's good news for us, in that we're relatively protected from sea level rises because the beach is rising, and the whole area is, I think it's about 1 millimetre a year. It's coming up.
So the other thing you find is the media, like, do you find this? The media kind of highlight extremes in one direction.
Yeah.
You know, like that.
Yeah.
Or, you know, what else is there? They highlight things that are extremes but don't. You know, you could say the east coast of Britain is eroding away and this, that, and the other, and all that lot.
Yeah.
But that's just that's natural, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing anyone's done.
Absolutely, and
to erode the
nothing
east
you can
coast
do
of-
about
there's
it
nothing
either.
you can do about
Yeah.
it. This side is building up and it's lifting up, right? So it's almost as if it's like the wave. It's like bits are falling off that end. It's like tipping point.
Yeah.
You know, sand's coming in this way. You could say sand's coming in this way, and it's slowly pushing
fall
off the other
end, yeah.
side.
Well,
you
give
know.
it.
And
yeah.
over, you know, Britain could like move.
Well, so
You know,
I mean,
bit by bit, it's kind of like the coast on the east is getting more west, and the coast on the west is
getting more east.
Yeah.
So if you roll back in time, you know, humans used to be able to walk from East Anglia to Belgium.
Oh yeah.
You know, Doggerland was a place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
Doggerland was a place. Give us another, I don't know, 100,000 years, we'll be able to walk to Ireland.
Right.
You know, the Irish Sea's filling. The Irish Sea's filling from both ends. So you know, that's the process we're witnessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah,
We don't need a ferry anymore.
absolutely, we're able to walk there. We will be able to walk there.
They'll put a road
It's
on
been
it.
happening since the end of the Ice Age.
Yeah.
The Irish Sea's filling. The flow through it is
From
dropping.
where? From the Atlantic.
It's filling. It's filling from sediment out all the rivers.
Oh right, so it's
So
filling that way.
and the scour through it is getting less and less. So it's not getting removed. So at some point it's going to be a situation where you can walk to Ireland. You know?
Irish ferries aren't happy about that.
Yeah, well they'll probably not be around. But you're absolutely right. There's this. You've got.
Or what to the Isle of Man? Could you get? I wonder if you could get to the Isle of Man.
Yeah, you'll probably get there first. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Loon Deeps might take a bit of time to fill, but yeah.
Yeah, no, because like the channel into
Yeah.
the Mersey, they constantly have to dredge it, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, if you
Yeah.
didn't dredge it, it would. Isn't that like every? We even got a ship that does it. I think it used to be
Yeah.
called the Mersey Mammoth or something. I think it was.
Yeah.
And they dredge it in order for ships to get up and down.
Mm-hmm.
But if they stop dredging it,
It would.
I wonder what
gradually
effect
fill.
that would have if they stopped dredging the Mersey.
Well, it wouldn't fill up, but what would do become unpredictable, like it used to be. So the reason Formby went under is they lost the channel. There was a channel on the Mersey that went up between a big sandbank and Formby, and it filled, and suddenly, just like here, the sandbank went. Oh, guess what? We can go inland now. And a massive sandbank went inland, and that's what happened at St Anne's too. They had it was the north channel of the Ribble closed up. And they went for a situation where they had a big sandbank offshore and a water channel, to having a sandbank. We thought, well, we'll go inland now, and the sandbank came in. That's what we've got here. Ours is a slower mover than either of those two. But if we got a proper storm, an Arwen type storm on a dry beach, with no grass here to protect us, we'd have lost the prom. I guarantee if we didn't have we didn't have all the sand here, the prom would have required, it would have been car deep all the way across it. It would have been a huge job to dig it out. And it'll happen, at some point it will happen. sure his eggs, I think is the term, we'll get a catastrophic storm. The kind that took out Meols, the kind that took out Formby. They're rare, but they happen.
Yeah.
And it's all about the combination of having a dry beach, so low tides or very, very high tides, because that's the one I mentioned is Scotland, Culbin. The problem there was they got a ridiculously high tide followed by a ridiculously low tide that coincided with a hurricane force wind, and because they had more sand exposed than normal and a drying wind, and it was clean sand, the wind was able to dry the sand, get it moving, and it buried 16 farms and a 3-storey manor house overnight. Yeah. Yeah. And redirected the river. Is it the Findhorn? I can't remember if it's the Findhorn or the... Yeah, I think it was one of the Findhorn River. Redirected the Findhorn River, so they actually couldn't find the town. Apart from the fact the roof of the manor house was exposed, they'd lost the entire town disappeared. Yeah. Though that might be exaggerated. Some people think it happened over a few days, but yeah.
When was that?
1730. And there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
There's no video footage.
There's no video footage. There's lots of sort of contemporary testimony on it though. You can go and read on it. There's books on it and all sorts.
Oh yeah.
The Culbin disaster. So that's what's getting back to what you said. We've got the slow process, the Irish Sea filling up. We've got the medium-term process, the East Hoyle Bank coming ashore, and we've got the risk of a catastrophic sandstorm. There was one in St Anne's that took houses out. It was so bad. It basically wiped out houses because if you pile enough weight of sand against walls, they fall over.
Yeah. Hard to imagine on a calm, warm day.
Yeah, absolutely, on a calm day. But yeah, so that's why that's why I think that the legal argument, and the protection from a sandstorm argument are more important than any other argument.
Yeah.
You'd be mad to take it away. Why would you want to? You've got plus the fact that we've got a storm surge. This will take energy out of the storm surge. So if we do get the freak conditions.
Yeah.
If you go, there's loads of bits of literature on Hurricane Sandy, because it's such a recent event, comparing the damage to properties along the northeast seaboard of the States as a result of Sandy. And there was particular communities that decided they didn't like sand dunes in the way, or salt marsh in the way of their views, had removed them. So they went house, beach, sea, and places that went house, sand dune, beach, sea. And it's like it's almost like it's binary, So the houses that took the dunes away got destroyed,
yeah.
And the houses that had the dune system in front of them, got a bit of wind damage to their roofs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now they've reached the point where there's a quite, it's like discovering the old wisdom, soft dune protection, because it can regrow. This got buried up to. I'll send you the photographs. I mean, it got because it's thinner at that end, up to about the elderly slip got buried. Because as the sand piles on top, eventually it gets a smooth surface and it can come over the top. Yeah. But this end didn't, and I forgot where I was going. I was going somewhere with that, but it regrows.
It regrows.
So, it regrows. So it's just grown through it. So you've got, if this was a hard barrier like this and it gets overtopped, you've got nowhere to go, because your wall's not going to grow. Your plastic netting isn't going to rebuild itself. But actually, this can regrow.
Yeah.
Grass can just come. Oh yeah, okay, I'll grow through that and carry on. And it only took 3 weeks for the Puccinelia to re-emerge after Arwen and go right. I'm ready for the next one, because it can do the stretch trick.
Was it? They got really deep roots.
Yeah, they have.
Is that what it is?
So that's the difference. So again, so Puccinelli's trick is it can grow through sand. It stretches. If you bury it, it stretches and just comes up again. Marram and limegrass, which I might be able to find some down there. Their trick is they've got really long roots that they can stabilise sand. Sandcouch too, which is the common grass in this sort of region here, has really long deep roots, so it stabilises sand.
Yeah.
Stops it moving. So there's
what I mean is as well is if you cut,
if you take it away, you're just going to release all the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they're really deep and you rake it, obviously it's happened.
Yeah.
Like the roots are still there.
Yeah.
Because you're not coming along and pulling every single root out, are you?
So that's
they're going to be there.
That's one of the big jokes.
It's like that. What's that weed we always foxtail weed or something?
Oh, mare's tail, yeah.
Mare's tail. That's it. Yeah. You never seem to get rid of it because the roots are.
Well, that's one of
duckweed
the things that I have to laugh because this is me sounding really churlish and uncharitable. So back out to the Spartina, the one that grows right out on the outside edge that people have been waging war on because they're scared of. It grows 46% faster if you dig it up because it's a really slow spreader. It basically it does produce seed, but it's not very good at it. Plus, this one's infected with a fungus that stops it reproducing sexually. So the only way it can grow is radially from the same spot, and it takes it 20 years to form a big patch. Or if you dig it up and break up the roots, it'll grow from the tiniest bit of a rhizome. And because they've spent 40 years digging it out, they spread it everywhere. So the second the sand comes to the right height, it goes, here I am, I'll grow. Yeah, and they're now shouting, "Oh, but the Spartina's taking over." And I'm going, "Well, it's taking over because you spent 40 years spreading its rhizomes. So the second the height's right, between just above mean high water and 20 centimetres above that, it's going to go. Thank you, I can grow in this and sprout."
Yeah.
More than going for the situation we've got odd clumps. They actually managed to make a flat grass sort of beach of it. Because it was so spread.